We talk to him kind of once a month now from the Winnipeg Free Press. Kenny Wiebe joining us here. Wiebe, I'm talking golf later. I don't know, how's your golf game looking? I know you're a Clear Lake guy. Waskesiu is beautiful. Everything, just how much snow we had. Seems like all courses in Saskatchewan are in great shape. What about Manitoba?
Yeah, things are looking pretty promising here. We did need some rain, but we did get that some of this week. But I know you were out at the Lobstick. I was at the Grey Owl and at Clear Lake earlier this month. So everything's looking good. And now gearing up for the Tamarack in August. That's the next the big tourney where you have the two rounds of stroke play and then followed by the match play. So should be a fun summer ahead. And game is trending upward. Still needs some putting work, but got the cap down under 12 for the first time in a long time. So we're hoping to the chase for single digits continues.
The one thing about golf, and I brought this up because the Lobstick played rake in place in the bunkers because you never know, it's wet and just bunkers are so inconsistent. In Saskatchewan, doesn't matter where you play. I play Riverside in Saskatoon. You can play wherever. I think that as soon as you drive into the province where the welcome to Saskatchewan, land of the living sky, there should be a sign. All bunkers are rake in place in Saskatchewan. I think what makes sense.
It is that time of year where it can be tough, right? I mean, some places too much sand, some places no sand. It's hard to find the happy medium on the prairies, I find. But go with the splash special and hope for the best. Open up that face and hope for the best.
The hope for the best shot. We all love that one. Okay, we're going to get to hockey in a bit because you're on top of everything when it comes Winnipeg Jets, obviously. But I want to just maybe get your take on the football team there. They play last night. Another, they say, sellout. Like the crowds in Winnipeg, let's go there first. Man, they draw nice. Like just a buzz around the team. What makes them so successful in drawing when it comes to the Winnipeg in the area?
Yeah, it's been really interesting the way that Wade Miller and company have turned it almost into like Manitoba's biggest social, or in Saskatchewan we would call it a cabaret, right? So the ability to have a 30,000 person social. Yes, of course there are the hardcores, and those hardcores are always there, but they've made it an event. There's even some standing room tickets, and some people just congregate around the Rum Hut, sort of a famous Manitoba landmark within Princess Auto Stadium. It's just become a real fun environment, and as someone who's turned 50 this year, not necessarily doing the same things we were in college, but they've got that college crowd, that younger CFL crowd into it. It's where they go before they go out, kind of thing. So obviously the winning has certainly helped for the franchise as well, but it's something that I think that all CFL teams would be discussing this around when they have their board meetings. I think it would be something that all teams kind of look at, maybe adding that additional element where if you can get that younger generation interested, and sometimes they aren't even watching the game as closely as maybe the the traditional fan, but they've turned it into a place that's fun. There's some tailgating happening outside beforehand, and just the environment and the atmosphere has been really, really fantastic. And again, last year they had the 0-4 start, so it wasn't as a jubilant in an environment, but they were still drawing a lot of fans, and it's something that's been impressive to see. And I mean, we know that these are the two stadiums in Regina and Winnipeg, newest in the league, and two of the most fun to be at when they're full. So hopefully that's something that we continue to see in both provinces here.
Not like the old days, though. Like you said, the college days, you just diesel beers on the one side there at Taylor. But the one thing I want to ask, like, are they drawing from outside of Winnipeg quite a bit? Like how far would people usually drive to a Bomber game if because Saskatchewan, right? Like people are driving from all neck of the woods.
I think it's fair to say that it would be very similar again with both organizations. I mean, I grew up in Altona, hour and 20 from Winnipeg. I do have quite a few friends that have season tickets, so there's always this great debate in terms of the scheduling, right? You have the lake folks that don't necessarily love the Friday nights and Saturday nights, but you have the folks coming from out of town that it's easier for them to come in on a weekend than a weeknight. So there's a bit of a balancing act, but yeah, I mean, people coming in from Brandon, people coming in from Altona, all around the province. I do think that is something that they've done and done very well. And I mean, we know that since the pandemic, that's probably one of the things with the riders, that you don't have as many people making the trek as maybe once did. I don't know how far that reaches, but certainly it has been a factor. But I mean, I think that with the riders being super competitive again, I think that's going to help drum up that
Yeah.
interest for people to be making the trek again and remembering how much fun it is. And yes, we know it's a big commitment, but it's 10 games a year, and I think that. I think it's going to be something that's going to be back up on the rise for the organization and for the folks in the province who love their riders.
If these two teams keep trending the way they are, which they should, a lot like last year, like that Labor Day game is going to be intense. Makes me want to go to the Banjo Bowl, maybe hit up Silver Heights for an evening. You never know what can happen, right?
The ribs, there you go. Get the ribs.
Okay. Hockey wise, you cover the Jets at Weeb's World. Great follow on Twitter. I want to first off go, and you know him, you've talked to him, Jonathan Toews. That one, Sharky called it. I got to say, Sharky called it. I said, nah, if he comes back, he ain't playing in Winnipeg. Sounds like, we're going to see Jonathan Toews in a Winnipeg Jets jersey. Like, just to wrap my head around that. Like, what can you tell us about that? What do you know, the process from what you've heard?
Yeah, sure. But quickly, I mean, how about that Kolaros run? We're not going to talk about that 13-yard scamper that maybe he traveled 3/4 of the field on that one.
I'm already out of my Winnipeg quota, Winnipeg Blue Bomber quota for the day. I can't do anymore. People start throwing stuff at me.
I got you. In terms of Toews, Barney, I mean, this is a marquee signing, and hey, I get it. Some people are skeptical. He's 37 years old and hasn't played for 2 years. That's totally fine, but as someone who's known Jonathan since he was 17 years old and was following his exploits even well before that, when he was playing on the only Team Western team that has ever won the U17s, right? This Manitoba Saskatchewan combined team. He was the driving force behind that, and I apologize if they have won since. I'm unfamiliar that they have won since, but this guy's one of the greatest leaders, in the history of the sport. Basically, triple gold club. He's won everything at every level, and I'm here to tell you, Barney, he's not coming here for a victory lap. He's not coming here to do the old final lap where you take the warm up and get on the ice and take one, and walk back into the rink or into the dressing room and gear down and say, "Man, that was really fun to hear the crowd cheer for me one more time." Like, this is a guy who believes he has what it takes to write his own ending, and he didn't like the way that things ended in Chicago with the Blackhawks. And yes, he knew that they were going down the tankathon path, but basically, was told that it was probably time, and then he made the decision to walk away and get healthy. But again, for a guy who wanted to be a one franchise player and had done so much for that franchise, this is an opportunity for him to chase another ring in a place that he's very familiar with. And those thoughts that he shared on Instagram, I know all your listeners have seen them, and there's a genuine appreciation for having the opportunity to potentially, rewrite the final chapter by playing in a province where he's already had a lake named after him. The community center is named after him. He's won the Order of Manitoba. And, oh, by the way, he'd still like to get his name on the cup for a fourth time. So I think it's a really high-end signing. And again, is he going to be peak Jonathan Toews 2010 being named top forward at the Olympics? That's a lot to ask, given the circumstances and the health challenges he has worked himself through. But I'm here to tell you, he didn't come back to be a fourth-line bit player, and that is with all due respect to fourth-line players. And I'm familiar with the role because, but this is a guy who wants to be a middle six player. At worst, he's going to be the best face-off guy they have. He can be a responsible checker. He's won the Selke Trophy. He's the triple threat. He's the guy you want on the ice when the game is tied. He's the guy you want on the ice when you're protecting a lead. And he's the guy on the ice that you want as the sixth attacker when you're trying to tie the game with the goalie out. So I think it's going to be fabulous for him to be around. And for guys like Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey, and even Adam Lowry, the captain, who is a great captain, having a guy like Jonathan around who has won everything at every level and is so driven to win. And the beauty of Jonathan, Barney, is that as much as he loves to win, he hates losing even more than he loves winning. And when you have guys like that around, it can only be a positive for a franchise that is trying to level up and go on one of those lengthy magic carpet rides like they had in 2018.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next with it, because when you think about it, first off, maybe this is a two-part. When do you expect him to actually be playing? Then the second part for the Jets, probably wouldn't be able to sign a guy like this in free agency. Like, let's equate him a little bit to a Tavares. Well, Tavares ain't gonna come play and win it. You know what I mean? Like for the Jets, for this to fall on their lap, like that's bonus central too.
Yeah, bang on. And so, firstly, I think he'll be ready for training camp and ready for the season. So, the thing about Jonathan is that teams were interested in bringing him in just prior to the deadline in March last year. And although he was trending the right way, he just wanted to have the extra time and months to get ready and be sure he was fully recovered. So, I do expect him right out of the gate. And again, you hit the nail on the head. So, the way the contract is structured, $2 million with up to 5 in bonuses. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Barney, the only way he collects the full 5 is if there's a parade at Portage in Maine next June. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think you or I or anyone who covers hockey is going to find a better option on the free agent market at $7 million who does not have a no move clause or is not,
Yeah.
necessarily all that interested in being in this location. So, yeah, I mean, it's a ground rule double at minimum, and it has the potential to be a home run and possibly a grand slam, depending as long as his health stays at where it was. And this is something that I've written about and reminded people about. The last time Jonathan Toews was healthy, Barney, was during the bubble playoffs, 2020. He was the best player in a series that involved Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and it wasn't particularly close. So I encourage, and again, I understand that was a crazy year and everything else. Go watch the highlights from the qualification round series between the Blackhawks and Oilers. Oilers were the runaway favorite, and Taves put those two guys in a vice and almost completely shut them down and then provided offense. So the bad news is, yes, I get it. That's 5 years ago, but that's the last time he was fully healthy. And I think he has an opportunity to do some great things. And again, is he the number 2 center right out of the gate? That's asking a lot, but this is a player. This isn't just a ham and egger coming out of the bullpen after 2 years. This isn't a guy coming to adult safe hockey after a couple year hiatus here. This is one of the best players of his generation. So again, and then the beauty of the Jets is that when Adam Lowry is back from the hip surgery and he's healthy, he also can play second line minutes. So all the people saying, oh, Jonathan Toews can't be a 2C. Well, let's just give it a little bit of runway here. He will show you if he can or cannot do it. And I would advise against betting against this guy here, just having the, having known him for as long as I have and having seen what he's accomplished. Again, I just think that he knows his body. He knows what his limitations are. And he's a guy that can be a big impact player.
That was that whole bubble thing. That's so weird, and people won't remember that. I remember it, but I don't remember Taves. So now that you got me thinking, I want to go back. What about when it comes to the Jets? Nikolai Ehlers. What's happening there?
Elliot reported it, and Elliot and I spoke yesterday afternoon too. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers has informed the Jets that he plans to hit the market, but he hasn't closed the door on them completely. But what that does is that it means that the 8th year, barring a last-minute offer before July 1st arrives, it means the 8th year is off the table. So, and if that is the case, that takes away the biggest advantage that the Jets have to this point, right? So with the 8th year, even if you're only at 8.5, the other teams with only that 7 year, you'd have to be at 10 or higher to beat the offer, essentially, or 9.75 or whatever number you want to use. But Ehlers is going. Mitch Marner is someone who's attracting tons of interest. But if he ends up in Vegas, that means Nikolai Ehlers is the most highly coveted winger out there, most likely, right? I mean, yes, Marchand, but if Marchand's not leaving and Bennett's not leaving, well, all of a sudden Ehlers is at the top of the class, and now you've got a bunch of teams in the East and the West that are interested in him. So it's going to be hard for the Jets to win a bidding war for Ehlers. Their best chance was to get him pre-July 1 when you have that ability to go to the 8th year. I think they were comfortable going and hitting the Scheifele Hellebuck number, and maybe even going the 8th year when those other guys had 7, because Ehlers is 29 and those guys' deals kicked in at 31. But it sounds like that's not going to happen, and if that doesn't happen, it's going to be more challenging to keep him around. And if he's gone, now you're looking at, trying to replace him with a Brock Besser, right? So Brock Besser is a guy the Jets have had their eyes on since he played at UND. Jonathan Toews played at UND. I don't know their relationship, but, now we're going to see if that's an option. And I do think Besser will consider the Jets, But again, now you're going to have to win a bidding war. If you can't keep your internal candidate, you don't have a guy in the minors that can jump in and jump into that role. We wondered if it might be Brad Lambert, and I know you had a chance to watch him when he went back to the Dub a bit. Brad had some injuries this year. He had a nice cameo. He did have one sleepless night after missing an open net in Chicago when he was up with the big club, but they didn't have a ton of offense in the minors. So Brad's offensive year was a bit stagnant. I think he only had 7 goals. So I think last summer at this time, I would have told you, well, Lambert looks like a guy who might be able to jump in the lineup at right wing. He still might make the team, but to ask him to be a second line right winger right now is probably a little bit asking too much. But again, that's the beauty of the summer. Let's see how these guys develop. Braden Yager, you had a chance to see him in the playoffs.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I was going to ask you about where do you think Yags goes? Sasky guy, played in Moose Jaw. Mm-hmm. Where do you feel him fitting in, or is it tough to say?
Yeah, speaking of guys who enjoy Waskasiu, right? So, I think that the ability, because Lowry's not there for at least 6 weeks, probably, maybe that opens the door. I think, and all these guys want to be ready and feel like they can jump right in. And because he's so smart, Barney, and because he's so defensively responsible, there is a scenario where he could kick the door down and maybe get that look at the beginning of the year, especially with Lowry not being available. So, but for me, it probably is always, as someone who covered the American League for 10 years, I know a lot of players want to start at the top right away. But it's way easier to go down to the minors, establish yourself, get those top 6 minutes, get those, first PP touches, maybe even get some penalty killing time if you're Yager, and play those 20 to 22 minutes rather than be a 12-minute NHL guy where you're, almost, again, I'm not saying this about him specifically, but when you're a 20-year-old guy, it's hard to be making confident plays with the puck on your stick when you're in a more of a checking role. So I think that he battles for a spot and maybe even makes the team out of camp, but he's probably going to need some American League time and probably maybe even most of the year. And I say this with all due respect. I think very highly of Yager, but I also have seen Kyle Connor and the benefits to Kyle Connor spending that full year in the American League after his cameo. It's such an important place to ply your trade and make your mistakes. And when you're a team that's trying to win the cup, it's harder to have on-the-job training at the NHL level when you see yourself as a Stanley Cup contender, even with a guy that has such a great skill set, can skate, can shoot, is defensively responsible. I just think he's going to probably need, at least half a season and maybe even a full season of the American League before he's ready to be an impact player. But again, because of the opportunity, he might kick the door down and say, hey, I'm here right now, and I may, steal a spot, quote unquote.
What are you expecting from the Jets in the draft, which starts tonight, obviously, with first round? But what are you expecting in the draft? Anything crazy?
Yeah, it's wild, right? I mean, I was talking to Sammy Cosentino and Jason Bukla earlier this week, and it's just such an unknown beyond, whatever the number you want to use, 12, 15, 20, whatever number you want to use. All the lists are so wildly different, not in terms of what names are on it, but what the order is. And, one team's going to have somebody, some team's going to have Blake Fiddler at, 18, and another one's going to say, man, I sure hope he's there at 28, right? So I think he's a guy that would make a lot of sense. Big 6'4" defenseman from the Oil Kings. He would make some sense for the Jets. They got Elias Solomonson coming up in probably this year or the next. So longer term, those guys make sense, but at the same time, they probably need a little bit of an injection of skill. So it's hard to gauge. What I've said earlier, I don't think they pick at 28th. I think they either move up or down or use that pick and package it for maybe a potential top 6 forward or as part of a bigger deal here. But it's going to be a fascinating time. I mean, I don't see these guys as much as I would like to, so I'm not here to say bang my fist on the table for Bill Zonin or Miles Gastrin or whatever else. I mean, what we know about the Jets, they love guys who wear letters at U18s. They love guys who are the Scholastic Player of the Year at times, and they love high character guys who have high hockey sense. But at the same time, the Jets also need an injection of speed in the organization. So I could see it going any number of ways, and I could also see them not making a pick at all and using that pick to, maybe try to get somebody like a Brian Rust. He's a guy whose name is out there a lot because his no move disappears or at least changes on July 1st. So I expect it to be a fascinating day, and curious for your thoughts on Carter Bear. He's the highest ranked Manitoban. It could go anywhere from 10 to 20 as well.
That's what I was looking at today with a lot of the guys, and I'm like, well, why does this guy have? I think I was looking at Reshny or somebody, and I was like, there's guys that are in that maybe 2-3 different, and then there's a guy that's 12 spots different. I don't know enough to, like you said, so much goes into it. We need speed. We want this. We don't need the leadership as much as we need this. It's hard to say. I think it's going to be a really weird draft too, with the respect that there's not a lot of players there. With the NHL not bringing the kids, it's unfortunate for a lot of them that aren't going to get that experience, right? Because that's when we interview guys on the Monday Nooner, it's like one of the things we ask. It's like, tell us about your draft story, and then they say, oh, my mom and dad, we came, and like Mike Commodore, we yesterday, like his one, he wasn't even going to go until New Jersey was like, no, you should actually come, like basically saying they were taking him. But yeah, the NHL draft is it starts tonight, so I guess we'll see. The Roger McQueen, I messaged his dad today. I messaged Scotty today and said, best of luck, congratulations. That was an unfortunate year for him, but he's still gonna go. I know Philly's been really high on him, really, just with that back injury. He didn't play much, but man, is he a big and talented kid.
Yeah, Sammy Cosentino had him on at 5th to Nashville in his mock. He thinks he could be today's big riser. And, I was speaking with Marty Murray, head coach and GM of the Wheat Kings earlier this week. And, he obviously has seen him more than anybody else. And he's super high on him. And there's obviously been a ton of interest around him, and lots of calls during the week. So I expect he'll be, in the top 10 for sure, and could be as high as 5th. So should be a fun day overall. But again, way different you calling me last year when I'm at the Sphere compared to me being in my home office here. Let's hope this is just a one and done special, and we get back to the normalcy next year again in next June.
Right on. Kenny, thanks so much. Hey, let's get that single next time we talk, single handicap, right? That's what the goal is. That's what and I'll try and get my putter going as well. And if you are making it this way, we're going to have to tee it up.
Yeah, always great to be with you. Have a great weekend, and good luck on the links as well, my friend.
Kenny Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press at Wiebe's World. Great follow on Twitter, joining us here on the Sports Cage. Quick.